Emperor Thaxryan sat on the crystal throne in the heart of the imperial palace on Zephyros Prime. Around him, the 12 high admirals of the empire stood in perfect formation, their faces showing the fear that had spread through the galaxy's greatest military force in just 2 days. Explained to me again how one ship defeated 60 of our vessels without suffering a single hit, the Emperor commanded. High Admiral Vexithara stepped forward. Her reptilian features showed the stress that had kept the entire High Command awake since Admiral Keflos's report arrived. Your Majesty, our tactical computers cannot explain the human capabilities. They appear to violate several known laws of physics. Laws of physics do not change for convenience, the Emperor replied coldly. What have our intelligence archives revealed about these humans? Admiral Nexavara activated a holographic display that filled the center of the throne room. Images of Earth appeared, showing the planet as Imperial scouts had last seen it 5 centuries ago. A burning, radioactive wasteland. The records are clear, Your Majesty. Humanity destroyed itself in global nuclear warfare approximately 500 years ago. Our long-range sensors confirmed massive radiation and no signs of life. We placed warning beacons around the system and classified it as a dead zone. Yet humans live, the Emperor observed. Either our records are wrong or we were deceived. Deep in the intelligence archives, Analysis Officer Kilthon worked frantically through classified files that had been sealed for centuries. What he found made his blue blood run cold. The nuclear destruction of Earth had happened exactly as reported, but there were inconsistencies in the data that had been overlooked. Admiral Texmion, he called to his superior. You need to see this immediately. The Admiral studied the data projections with growing alarm. These radiation patterns, they're too perfect, too evenly distributed. Yes, sir. And look at this. Spectral analysis shows the nuclear detonations all occurred within a 6-hour period. For a global war, that's remarkably coordinated. Admiral Texmion felt pieces of a terrible puzzle falling into place. Get me every surveillance record from that time period. Everything our deep space monitors recorded. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Captain Donghae prepared to address the universe. The Silent Thunder had returned to the hidden human fleet base in the Kuiper Belt, where hundreds of ships waited in the darkness between worlds. Are you ready for this? Asked Communications Officer Hana. Her fingers moved over controls that would broadcast on every Imperial frequency simultaneously, something that should have been impossible without access to Imperial military codes. We've been ready for 5 centuries, Donghae replied. It's time the galaxy learned the truth. The transmission began, reaching every Imperial world, every space station, every ship in the vast empire. Donghae's image appeared on billions of screens, showing a face that looked human, but carried an intelligence that seemed older and deeper than it should. Citizens of the galaxy, I am Captain Donghae of the Terran Federation. Your empire has told you that humanity destroyed itself in primitive warfare. This was a lie. Across the empire, beings of dozens of species stopped what they were doing to listen. The human was speaking in perfect Imperial standard, but his voice carried harmonics that suggested his vocal cords had been modified for enhanced communication. 500 years ago, my people faced a choice. We could resist the Empire's expansion and be destroyed, or we could appear to destroy ourselves and use the time to grow stronger. We chose survival. Intelligence analyst Jiwan worked at her station aboard the Silent Thunder, her fingers dancing over controls that monitored Imperial communications. Captain, Imperial Command is going crazy. They're trying to trace our transmission source, but our quantum scramblers are keeping them confused. Let them listen, Donghae replied. Truth has its own power. On the Imperial capital world, Emperor Thaxryan watched the human broadcast with growing rage. Cut the transmission. Block all frequencies. We're trying, Your Majesty, reported his chief technician. But they're broadcasting on wavelengths we didn't know existed. Their signal is penetrating our communication shields. Donghae continued his message to the galaxy. While your empire grew comfortable in its dominance, humanity spent 5 centuries learning, adapting, and evolving. We studied your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. We developed sciences you have never imagined. Navigation Officer Tae-hyun provided real-time updates from across the solar system. Captain, our deep space sensors show massive Imperial fleet movements. They're mobilizing everything. How many ships? Asked Donghae. Over 3,000 vessels converging on the Sol system. They're bringing the Third Armada. In the Imperial archives, Kilthon finally found the smoking gun he had been looking for. Buried in 500-year-old surveillance data was evidence that the human nuclear war had been carefully orchestrated. Every detonation had been precisely placed to create maximum visible destruction while preserving underground facilities and orbital installations. "Admiral," he called urgently. "The humans never intended to destroy themselves. The nuclear attacks were a deception to make us believe they were extinct." Admiral Tex Meon studied the evidence with growing horror. "They've been watching us for 5 centuries. Everything we've done, every tactical development, every technological advancement, they've been studying it all. Sir, there's more. Our deep space monitors show evidence of construction in the outer Sol system, dating back centuries. They've been building something massive." The Admiral's face turned pale. "Get this information to the Emperor immediately. The Empire is facing an enemy that has been preparing for this moment for 500 years. Back on the Silent Thunder, Donghae concluded his broadcast to the galaxy. "Your Empire believes in conquest through superior force. We offer something different, evolution through cooperation. The question now is whether your leaders are wise enough to choose progress over pride." As the transmission ended, alarms sounded throughout the Imperial fleet. Grand Admiral Nexthul received emergency orders to mobilize every available ship and proceed to the Sol system with authorization to use maximum force. "How many humans are we facing?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Unknown, sir. Our estimates range from a single colony ship to a full civilization. The truth is, we have no idea what we're walking into." Emperor Thaxryan stood before his throne, staring at intelligence reports that painted a picture of imperial arrogance and human cunning. For 5 centuries, the Empire had ignored the Sol system, assuming it was dead. Instead, it had become the birthplace of a new kind of power. "Prepare the Grand Fleet," he commanded. "If these humans want to challenge imperial authority, they will learn why we have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. But in the depths of space, hidden among the asteroids and forgotten moons of the solar system, humanity prepared for a confrontation that would determine the future of galactic civilization. They had spent 5 centuries learning every imperial weakness and developing technology beyond imperial. Understanding the Empire was about to discover that sometimes the greatest threat comes not from unknown enemies, but from the species you thought you had already defeated. Humanity was ready to show the galaxy what 500 years of forced evolution could create. The Silent Thunder docked with New Geneva, humanity's greatest achievement hidden in the darkness of the Kuiper Belt. The massive station looked like a fusion of organic growth and advanced technology, its hull alive with energy patterns that shifted and flowed like breathing metal. Captain Donghae walked through corridors that hummed with life, passing windows that showed the impossible sight of hundreds of human vessels preparing for deployment. Ships of every size and purpose filled the hidden construction bays. Warships that moved like living creatures, science vessels that bent space around them, and colony carriers designed to terraform worlds in decades instead of centuries. "Welcome home, Captain," said Fleet Admiral Junho as Donghae entered the command center. The older man stood before a holographic display showing the entire solar system, with tactical markers indicating human positions the Empire had never detected. "How many ships do we have ready?" Donghae asked. 300 combat vessels, 500 support ships, and our mobile shipyards. More than enough to handle anything the Empire can send. Chief Science Officer Yuna studied the intelligence data flowing in from across the galaxy. "The Imperial response is exactly what we predicted. Grand Admiral Nexthul is bringing the Third Armada, over 3,000 ships. They're planning to overwhelm us with pure numbers." "That's always been their way," observed Engineer Soman. "The Empire never learned subtlety because they never needed it. When you have the biggest fleet, why develop strategy?" Medical Officer Yaren looked up from her biological analysis station. "Captain, our genetic modifications are performing even better than expected. Human reaction times are now 40% faster than baseline Imperial species, and our pattern recognition capabilities exceed their tactical computers." Admiral Junho activated a new display showing human forces scattered throughout dozens of star systems. "This is our real advantage. While the Empire masses their fleet for a traditional battle, we've been preparing for something they've never encountered." Scout Captain Sunho materialized on the main communications screen, broadcasting from deep space near the Imperial staging area. "Admiral, I can confirm Imperial fleet composition. Standard formation. Predictable tactics. No innovation in their approach. They're treating this like every other conquest. Perfect, replied Junho. Are the other fleet commanders ready? The screen split to show 3 more human captains. Na Young commanding the exploration fleet, Jinwoo leading the fast attack squadrons, and Chaeyoung in charge of the heavy assault vessels. Each represented a different aspect of humanity's evolutionary approach to warfare. Captain Na Young, report status, ordered Junho. Science fleet ready, Admiral. We've completed temporal mapping of the entire combat zone. When the battle begins, we'll be able to predict Imperial movements up to 30 seconds in advance. Captain Jinwoo, fast attack squadrons distributed across 17 star systems. We can strike anywhere in the galaxy within minutes using quantum tunnel drives. Captain Chaeyoung, heavy assault fleet standing by in dimensional fold space. The Empire won't see us coming until we're already inside their formation. Donghae studied the tactical display with satisfaction. This was what 5 centuries of careful planning had created. Not just better technology, but an entirely new way of thinking about warfare. While the Empire still fought like an ancient army, humans had evolved into something like a living organism. Admiral, interrupted Navigation Officer Taehyun. Imperial scouts are approaching the outer system. Estimated arrival of main fleet in 6 hours. Signal all human vessels, Junho commanded. Execute Protocol Omega. Across the solar system, human ships began to vanish from normal space-time. Not destroyed, not fleeing, but stepping sideways into dimensions the Empire had never learned to perceive. To Imperial sensors, the Sol system would appear completely empty, just as it had for 5 centuries. Grand Admiral Nexthol stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Domination, watching his enormous fleet approach the dead human system. 3,000 ships spread across space in a formation designed to intimidate and overwhelm any opposition. Sir, reported his sensor officer, long-range scans show no activity in the Sol system. No ships, no energy signatures, no signs of civilization. Impossible. Our intelligence clearly shows human activity in this system. Perhaps they fled when they detected our approach. Nexthol considered this possibility. It would fit the Imperial understanding of how primitive species behaved when faced with overwhelming force. Maintain formation. Sweep every planet, every moon, every asteroid. Find them. What the Imperial Admiral didn't understand was that the humans had not fled. They had simply stopped playing by Imperial rules. In fold space, 300 human vessels waited in perfect synchronization, their crews monitoring Imperial movements through sensors that operated outside normal physics. Empire fleet entering the asteroid belt, reported Tactical Officer Saiwan aboard the Silent Thunder. They're using standard search patterns exactly as predicted. Time to show them that the age of Imperial dominance is over, said Donghae. Signal the fleet. Begin materialization sequence. The Imperial fleet found itself suddenly surrounded by ships that had appeared from nowhere. Not approaching from the edge of the system as military doctrine demanded, but materializing simultaneously around every Imperial vessel in a display of coordinated precision that should have been impossible. Where did they come from? Shouted Nexthol as his tactical computers failed to track the human ship's approach vectors. Unknown, sir. They just appeared. On the Silent Thunder, Yuna activated systems that the Empire had never imagined. Quantum entanglement fields online. We now have real-time tactical coordination across all human vessels. Temporal analysis complete, added Tactical Officer Dayun. Imperial fleet movements predicted for the next 47 minutes. Donghae opened communications to the Imperial flagship. Grand Admiral Nexthol, I am Captain Donghae of the Terran Federation. You are surrounded. Impossible. We outnumber you 10 to 1. Numbers mean nothing when you fight predictably, Donghae replied calmly. Your tactical doctrine hasn't changed in centuries. We've had 500 years to study every weakness. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship perfectly coordinated with every other vessel. Imperial gunners found themselves aiming at empty space as human ships seemed to dance between weapon blasts. Their movements guided by prediction algorithms that processed Imperial tactics faster than thought. Sir, called Nexthol's tactical officer, their formation is impossible. They're violating basic principles of fleet coordination. They're not violating anything, realized the Admiral with growing horror. They're using principles we never learned. Communications Officer Hana broadcast on all Imperial frequencies, her voice reaching every ship in the enemy fleet. Imperial forces, you have entered Terran space without permission. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. This is Imperial space claimed by right of conquest. Nexthul responded. Conquest of what? Asked Captain Nayung, her science vessels materializing inside the Imperial formation. You conquered an empty system 5 centuries ago. We've been living here the entire time, watching you, learning from you, evolving beyond you. The Imperial fleet found itself facing an enemy that fought like no species they had ever encountered. Human ships didn't just attack. They anticipated, adapted, and evolved their tactics in real time. Every Imperial move was countered before it was completed. Every attack neutralized before it was launched. Admiral, reported Jinwoo from his fast attack squadron. Imperial communication systems are compromised. We've been monitoring their tactical frequencies for decades. Grand Admiral Nexthul realized the terrible truth. The Empire wasn't just facing a superior enemy. They were facing an enemy that had been studying them for centuries, learning every tactic, every weakness, every predictable response. Prepare to withdraw, he ordered quietly. Sir, you heard me. Signal the fleet. We're leaving. But Admiral, our orders assumed we were facing a primitive species. These humans are something else entirely. As the Imperial fleet began its retreat, Donghae broadcast one final message. Grand Admiral, tell your Emperor that humanity offers peace, but on terms of equality. We are no longer the species you remember. We have become something new. The Empire fled from the Sol system, leaving behind the wreckage of their assumptions and the beginning of a new age in galactic history. Admiral Keflos arrived at the Sol system with 30 of the Empire's finest warships. The massive vessels formed a perfect battle formation, their hulls gleaming with the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. In his long career, Keflos had never met an enemy that could stand against such overwhelming force. Where is this human ship? He asked his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. It vanished from our sensors after disabling the patrol squadron. Captain Nexthul reports that their weapons were surgically removed without harm to the crew. Keflos growled, a sound that made his bridge crew step back. The Krextai were known for their aggressive nature and perfect military record. No species had ever humiliated them as these supposed humans had done. Impossible. Our intelligence files show humans as primitive bipeds who destroyed themselves with crude nuclear weapons. How could such creatures develop technology beyond our understanding? Deep in the asteroid belt, the silent thunder waited patiently. Captain Donghae stood before a wall of screens showing the Imperial formation. His crew worked quietly at their stations, each one a product of centuries of careful selection and training. Their formation is exactly what we predicted, observed Chief Science Officer Yuna. Her scanners were already analyzing every ship in the Imperial fleet. No technological advancement in the past 300 years. They've become lazy. Engineer Soman looked up from her station. Captain, our quantum processors have finished analyzing their weapon systems. Every ship uses the same basic energy patterns. Their tactics haven't changed since they conquered the Vegan systems. That's what happens when you never face real opposition, replied Tactical Officer Minho. They've forgotten how to innovate, Donghae nodded. Humanity had spent 5 centuries studying every aspect of Imperial military doctrine. While the Empire grew comfortable in their dominance, humans had learned to think differently. Every challenge made them stronger. Every problem forced them to find new solutions. Admiral Keflos, Donghae broadcast on Imperial frequencies. I am Captain Donghae of the Terran Federation. You're trespassing in human space. The Imperial bridge erupted in angry voices. Keflos roared for silence. Human space. This is Imperial territory, claimed by right of conquest. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. The only thing you conquered here was empty space, Donghae replied calmly. Earth was never destroyed. We simply allowed you to believe it was while we prepared for this moment. On the Silent Thunder, Yuna activated systems that the Empire had never imagined possible. Human science had not just advanced, it had evolved along completely different paths. While Imperial technology focused on brute force, humans had learned to bend the laws of physics themselves. Matter phase torpedoes ready, reported Minho. Temporal shields at full power. Quantum processors online, added Soman. All systems responding faster than biological thought. Admiral Keflos studied the empty space around his fleet. His sensors showed nothing, but instinct told him the humans were close. Very close, All ships, spread formation. Use deep scan sensors. Find that ship. Sir, called his sensor operator. I'm detecting strange quantum fluctuations throughout the area. The readings don't make sense. Explain. It's as if space itself is thinking. Before Keflos could respond, the silent thunder materialized directly in the center of his formation. The human ship hadn't approached from outside, it had stepped out of folded spacetime itself, appearing where no ship should have been able to survive. All ships, open fire, Keflos commanded. 30. Imperial warships unleashed enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Energy beams that had shattered the defenses of countless worlds converged on the human vessel. The attacks passed harmlessly through empty space. The silent thunder danced between the energy blasts like water flowing around stones. Minho's enhanced reflexes allowed him to calculate the path of every shot before the Imperial gunners had finished aiming. "How is this possible?" shouted Keflos as his fleet's weapons found nothing but vacuum. Donghei's voice came across the communication channel, still perfectly calm. "You've been fighting the same way for centuries, Admiral. We've had 500 years to learn something new." The silent thunder's weapons fired once. Not the massive energy blasts favored by Imperial doctrine, but precise beams of coherent matter that phased through shields, as if they didn't exist. Each shot struck exactly where it was intended: weapon systems, engine controls, communication arrays. One by one, the Imperial ships found themselves disarmed and helpless. Their hulls remained intact, their crews unharmed, but their ability to fight was surgically removed. In 12 minutes, 30 of the Empire's finest warships had been reduced to floating monuments to their own obsolescence. "Impossible," Keflos whispered, staring at his dead weapon controls. The word impossible appears frequently in Imperial military reports, Donghei observed. "Perhaps that's why you stopped advancing. When you declare something impossible, you stop trying to achieve it." Yuna ran detailed scans of the disabled Imperial fleet. "Captain, their technology is even more primitive than we expected. They're still using linear energy projection and basic metal hulls. No quantum processing, no adaptive systems, no temporal manipulation. 5 centuries of unchallenged rule," Soman added. "They never needed to improve, so they never learned how." On his crippled flagship, Admiral Keflos struggled to understand what had happened. His tactical computers showed impossible data. The human ship had moved through his formation without following any known laws of physics. "Get me emergency communications to High Command," he ordered. "Priority 1 alert. We face an enemy beyond our classification systems." "Sir," his communication officer replied. "Our transmission systems have been disabled." "Then send a message drone." "The launch tubes are also non-functional." Keflos realized the horrible truth. The humans had not just defeated his fleet, they had done it without causing a single casualty, while completely cutting off his ability to warn the Empire. Donghei's voice filled the Imperial bridge one final time. "Admiral Keflos, in approximately 1 hour, your communication systems will repair themselves. When they do, you will contact your High Command and deliver this message exactly as I give it to you." The main screen activated, showing Donghei standing on his bridge. He looked exactly like the humans in Imperial historical records. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face that showed intelligence and determination. But there was something in his eyes that no Imperial record had captured. This was not a primitive creature struggling to survive. This was an apex predator that had spent centuries learning to hunt. "Tell your Emperor that humanity formally requests diplomatic recognition as an independent power. We claim no Imperial territory, demand no tribute, and threaten no Imperial citizens. We ask only for acknowledgement that we exist and the right to travel freely through galactic space." "And if the Empire refuses?" Keflos asked. Donghei smiled, and Keflos felt a chill run through his spine. "Admiral, you just saw what one human ship can do to 30 Imperial vessels. Do you really want to discover what we've built in 5 centuries of secret development?" The silent thunder vanished from Imperial sensors as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving 30 disabled ships and 1 terrified admiral to contemplate a truth that would shake the Empire to its foundation. Humanity was not extinct. They had evolved into something beyond Imperial understanding, and they had been watching the Empire all along. The question now was whether the galaxy's greatest power was wise enough to accept that they were no longer alone at the top of the food chain. Fleet Commander Veltar floated in his command chair, his crystal body reflecting the soft blue light of the control room. The Kethri were known throughout the galaxy for their perfect memory and cold logic. For 500 years, Veltar had served the Galactic Empire, and in all that time nothing had surprised him. Today felt different. "Commander," called sensor operator Zixnal from across the bridge, "I'm getting strange readings from the Sol quarantine zone." Veltar's crystalline form shifted slightly. The Sol system had been dead for centuries. Everyone in the Empire knew the story of humanity, a primitive species that destroyed itself with nuclear weapons before they could even leave their home planet. The Empire had placed warning beacons around the system and forgotten about it. "What kind of readings?" Veltar asked. Zixnal's tentacles moved over his control panel. "Energy signatures, sir. But they don't match anything in our database. The patterns are completely unknown. Impossible. Nothing lives in that dead system. The readings are getting stronger, Commander. Whatever it is, it's moving toward our position." Veltar felt something he had not experienced in decades: uncertainty. The Galactic Empire controlled thousands of worlds and hundreds of species. Their technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. How could there be energy patterns they didn't recognize? Deep in space near the giant planet Jupiter, Captain Donghae stood on the bridge of the Silent Thunder. Unlike the cold metal ships of the Empire, human vessels felt alive. Warm lights, comfortable seats, and the gentle hum of advanced engines created an atmosphere of controlled power. Final systems check complete. "Captain," reported Chief Science Officer Yuna. Her voice was calm, but Donghae could see the excitement in her eyes. They had all waited their entire lives for this moment. "Tactical systems ready," announced Minho from his station. The young officer had trained for years but had never faced real combat. Today would test everything humanity had learned. Engineer Somin looked up from her control panel. "All engines operating at full efficiency, sir. The new quantum drives are performing better than expected." Donghae nodded and looked out at the stars. For 500 years, his people had hidden in the darkness between planets, building and learning and growing stronger. The Empire thought humans were extinct. That had been the plan all along. "Open a channel to Earth Command," Donghae ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Junho in the hidden command center built deep inside an asteroid. Behind him, dozens of officers worked at control stations that monitored the entire solar system. "Are you ready, Captain?" Junho asked. "We've been ready for 5 centuries, sir. Remember, this is not about revenge. This is about showing the galaxy that humanity has grown beyond what anyone imagined." Donghae understood. The nuclear wars that supposedly destroyed Earth had been carefully staged. While the Empire watched from a distance, convinced that humans had killed themselves, the real population had moved to hidden colonies throughout the solar system. Generation after generation had worked toward this day. "Contact in 30 minutes, reported Navigation Officer Taehyun. "Imperial patrol ships are approaching our position." Back on the Imperial station, Veltar watched his screens with growing concern. The energy signatures were now clearly artificial, definitely a ship, but unlike anything in Imperial records. "Sir," Zixnal said, his voice shaking slightly, "the object just appeared on visual sensors. You need to see this." The main screen filled with an image that made Veltar's crystal body flash bright red, a sign of extreme shock among his people. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull seemed to bend light around it, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Energy flowed across its surface like living lightning. "What is that?" whispered someone on the bridge. "Send a message to Fleet Command," Veltar ordered. "Tell them we have an unknown contact in the Sol quarantine zone. Request immediate backup." 3 Imperial patrol ships moved toward the strange vessel. Captain Nexel commanded the lead ship, the Domination. Like all Imperial officers, he had never faced an enemy that could match Imperial technology. "Unknown vessel," Nexel broadcast on all frequencies. "You are in violation of Imperial quarantine law. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed." The response came on a frequency the Empire had never used, broadcast with power that should have been impossible for a single ship. "This is Captain Donghae of the Terran vessel Silent Thunder. We are humans, citizens of Earth, and we have been waiting for you." Silence filled the Imperial bridge. Every officer stared at their captain in disbelief. Humans were extinct. Everyone knew that. The history books were clear. "Impossible," Nexel finally said. "Humans destroyed themselves centuries ago." Donghae's voice came back calm and confident. We destroyed nothing but your assumptions. For 500 years we have watched your empire from the shadows. We have learned your weaknesses, studied your technology, and grown far beyond what you believe possible. On the Silent Thunder, Yunha ran her sensors over the Imperial ships. Their technology is exactly what we expected, Captain. No advancement in centuries. They've become comfortable with their dominance. Show them what comfort costs, Donghae replied. The Silent Thunder moved like no ship the Imperials had ever seen. Instead of the straight-line attacks favored by Imperial doctrine, it flowed through space like water. Weapons that should have found their target passed harmlessly through empty space as the human ship seemed to predict every move before it was made. "How are they doing that?" shouted Nexel as his gunners failed to land a single hit. Minho smiled at his tactical station. Human reflexes, enhanced by centuries of careful genetic improvement, allowed him to process information faster than any alien brain. He could see where the Imperial ships would be before their own pilots knew. "Warning shots only," Donghae commanded. "Disable their weapons, but don't harm the crews." Lines of energy reached out from the Silent Thunder, precisely striking the Imperial ships' weapon systems. In less than a minute, 3 of the Empire's finest vessels floated helplessly in space, their crews unharmed but completely defeated. Veltar received the report with his crystal body flashing rapid sequences of color, the Kethri equivalent of panic. A single human ship had defeated 3 Imperial vessels without breaking a sweat. "Get me Admiral Keflos," he ordered. "Tell him to bring everything he has. We're going to need the entire battle squadron." As alarms sounded throughout the Imperial fleet, Donghae opened one final channel to the disabled ships. "Captain Nexel, are you receiving this transmission?" "Yes," came the shaken reply. "Tell your empire that humanity formally announces its return to galactic society. We are no longer the primitive species in your history books. We have evolved. The question now is whether your empire is wise enough to evolve with us." The Silent Thunder vanished from Imperial sensors, leaving 3 damaged ships and a galaxy-shaking truth. Humanity was not only alive, but had become something the Empire was not prepared to face. Emperor Thaxarion stood in the Imperial War Room, staring at tactical displays that showed the impossible. Grand Admiral Nexthul's fleet of 3,000 ships had retreated from the Sol system without firing a single shot. The greatest military force in galactic history had been turned away by humans who were supposed to be extinct. "Explain this to me again," the Emperor demanded, his voice cold with rage. "Your Majesty," replied Admiral Vexithera, "the human fleet demonstrated capabilities beyond our understanding. They appeared and disappeared at will, predicted our movements before we made them, and showed coordination that violates known laws of physics. Laws of physics do not change because a species finds them inconvenient. With respect, Your Majesty, perhaps our understanding of those laws is incomplete." The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury. "Summon the Grand Fleet, every ship, every system, everything we have. These humans will learn what happens when they challenge Imperial authority." Deep in the Kuiper Belt, Fleet Admiral Junho received reports from across the galaxy. Imperial forces were mobilizing on a scale never before seen, pulling ships from every corner of their territory. Over 10,000 vessels were converging on the Sol system. "They're bringing everything," observed Captain Donghae as he studied the intelligence data. "The entire Imperial Navy." "Good," replied Medical Officer Yaren from her station. "It's time they learned what 5 centuries of evolution can accomplish." Chief Science Officer Yunha activated a holographic display showing the advancing Imperial Armada. "Their formation is exactly what we predicted. Overwhelming force arranged in traditional patterns. They're still thinking like conquerors instead of strategists. Any species can build bigger ships," added Engineer Soman. "It takes intelligence to build better ones, Admiral." Junyo opened communications. "To all human commanders across the Hidden Fleet, this is it. Everything we've worked toward for 500 years comes down to the next few hours. Remember, we're not fighting for conquest or revenge. We're fighting to prove that evolution is stronger than stagnation." The Imperial Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace like a metal storm. 10,000 warships, each one capable of destroying entire worlds, formed a battle formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. At the center, Emperor Thaxarion himself commanded from the super dreadnought Galactic Dominion, a ship so massive it carried its own escort fleet. Your Majesty, reported Fleet Admiral Kexthul, sensors detect no human activity in the system. They appear to have fled before our arrival. Cowards, the Emperor growled. Begin systematic bombardment of every planet. If they're hiding, we'll blast them out. Before the Imperial fleet could open fire, space around them rippled like water. Human ships began materializing not from the edge of the system, but from dimensions that Imperial science insisted didn't exist. 50 vessels appeared simultaneously, each one precisely positioned for maximum tactical advantage. Impossible, shouted the Emperor as his tactical computers failed to explain how 50 ships had appeared inside his formation of 10,000. Captain Donghei's voice reached every Imperial vessel simultaneously. Emperor Thax Ryan, I am Captain Donghei of the Terran Federation. You have brought an army to fight an idea. This will not end as you expect. Surrender immediately or face complete annihilation, the Emperor replied. We tried surrender 500 years ago, Donghei answered calmly. You chose genocide instead. Today we offer you something better, evolution. The human fleet moved like nothing the Empire had ever seen. Instead of massive formations designed to intimidate, human ships flowed through space like a living organism. Each vessel operated independently, while maintaining perfect coordination with every other ship. Tactical Officer Minho coordinated the first wave of attacks from aboard the Silent Thunder. Human weapons didn't follow Imperial doctrine. Instead of trying to overwhelm enemy shields with brute force, they phased through defenses as if they didn't exist. How are they doing that? Demanded the Emperor as his ship's shields proved useless against human weapons. Their weapons operate on quantum frequencies we've never encountered, reported his science officer. They're not breaking through our shields. They're ignoring them entirely. Navigator Taehyun guided the Silent Thunder through impossible maneuvers, using gravitational fields as stepping stones and bending spacetime to move faster than Imperial computers could track. Around him, the rest of the human fleet performed similar feats of applied physics. Sir, called an Imperial officer, panic clear in his voice. Their ships are inside our formation. How did they get past our perimeter? They didn't, realized Fleet Admiral Kexthul with growing horror. They went around it. Through dimensions we can't access. Communications Officer Hana broadcast on frequencies that shouldn't have existed, her signal reaching every Imperial ship despite their attempts to jam human communications. Imperial forces, your Emperor has led you into a battle you cannot win. We offer terms of surrender. The Empire does not surrender to primitives, roared Thax Ryan. Then, you have chosen to prove your primitiveness, replied Captain Nayung, as her science vessels demonstrated technologies that turned Imperial understanding of warfare inside out. The battle revealed the fundamental difference between Imperial and human approaches to conflict. The Empire relied on overwhelming force applied through predictable tactics. Humanity had learned to fight like water, flowing around obstacles, adapting instantly to changing conditions, and striking where the enemy was weakest. Engineer Soman activated systems that the Empire had never imagined possible. Human ships began repairing damage faster than Imperial weapons could inflict it, their hulls flowing like liquid metal to seal breaches and regenerate destroyed sections. Their ships are healing themselves, reported an Imperial gunner. That's not possible, insisted his captain. Tell that to their hulls. Captain Jinwoo led fast attack squadrons in maneuvers that violated everything Imperial tacticians understood about space combat. His ships moved through the Imperial formation like ghosts, striking precisely at weapon systems and command centers while avoiding any action that would harm Imperial crews. Why aren't they trying to kill us? Wondered an Imperial captain as his ship was systematically disabled without casualties. The answer came from Captain Chae-young as her heavy assault vessels demonstrated the ultimate expression of human tactical evolution, because we've evolved beyond the need to prove ourselves through destruction. Your defeat teaches the galaxy more than your death ever could. Tactical Officer Dayun coordinated the final phase of the battle from her station aboard the Silent Thunder. Human ships moved in perfect synchronization, each one guided by quantum processors that thought faster than biological minds while maintaining the flexibility that only living intelligence could provide. Emperor Thaxarian watched in helpless rage as his grand fleet of 10,000 ships was systematically dismantled by 50 human vessels. Not destroyed, that would have been simple genocide. Instead, each Imperial ship was precisely disabled, its weapons removed and engines shut down while crew safety was carefully maintained. Surrender. Donghei's voice reached the Imperial flagship. Your fleet is defeated, your crews are safe, and your empire has learned something important today. What is that? The Emperor asked through gritted teeth. That the age of conquest through superior numbers is over. The future belongs to species that can evolve. Communications Officer Hana broadcast to the entire galaxy, her signal reaching every world in Imperial space. People of the galaxy, the Galactic Empire has fallen not through destruction, but through obsolescence. Humanity offers a new path forward. Cooperation instead of conquest. Evolution instead of stagnation. Fleet Admiral Junho appeared on screens throughout the disabled Imperial fleet. Imperial officers, you have fought bravely according to your understanding of warfare. But understanding can grow. We invite you to learn what we have learned, that true strength comes not from the size of your fleet, but from the flexibility of your mind. Emperor Thaxarion sat in his command chair, surrounded by the wreckage of Imperial certainty. 10,000 ships had been defeated by 50, not through treachery or superior numbers, but through the simple application of 5 centuries of continuous evolution. What do you want? He asked quietly. Partnership, replied Donghei. The galaxy is vast enough for both our approaches to coexist. Your empire's knowledge of administration and infrastructure, combined with humanity's innovation and adaptability, could build something greater than either could achieve alone. Medical. Officer Yaren added her voice to the growing chorus of human officers extending offers of cooperation instead of demands for surrender. Your people and ours have both survived and prospered. Imagine what we could accomplish if we shared our discoveries instead of hiding them. The Emperor looked around his bridge at officers who had served him faithfully for decades. In their eyes he saw not defeat but curiosity. The humans had accomplished something that should have been impossible, and they were offering to teach rather than conquer. Very well, he said finally. The Galactic Empire accepts your terms. Perhaps it is time we learned what lies beyond our current understanding.